So it's Sunday afternoon, Charlie, and I'm sitting on my couch. Brinkley, our golden retriever, sitting there at my feet. And I typically take time out on Sunday afternoon to do some writing, reflecting from the week. And I go to open up my manuscript for the next book, Thief of Purpose, right? And I'm clicking on the file, and it's not opening. I'm like, what's going on here? And I keep trying to open it, and the book is pretty much done, right? I just have some things that I want to finish to it. It's supposed to come out this year. And I keep clicking on it, and then it says, file not found. I'm like, well, that's not right. So I check the cloud. I'm looking everywhere for it. It is nowhere. I mean, 9 months of writing, 15 chapters, and there's just an icon on my computer with the title and nothing in the file. It literally says 0 bytes, and I'm just in panic mode. So I start calling our IT team. I'm talking to everyone. I take it to the Genius Bar, and it's gone. It disappeared overnight.
And with that, welcome to the podcast. Sounds like we're going to get real with Davin Salvagno, my good friend and soon to be yours. Davin, welcome home. Welcome to Broad River Retail. Welcome to the pod.
Oh, it is great to be here, and it feels like home. I mean, and I'm not just saying that because people say it feels like home. I mean, Broad River has always felt like home since we've known each other, but Charlotte is starting to really feel like home. I don't want to go back to Michigan. I always say I want to go back home, but Michigan doesn't feel like home anymore. Like, I feel like this is home.
Well, home is where your heart is, so your family is still there. So that's
right.
Still where your home is. I probably should introduce the podcast appropriately. Welcome to Stories from the River. I'm with my good friend, Davin Salvagno. Davin, hope to have you here for a few episodes, too, because we got a lot of content to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail.
Now, you and I got connected during, I believe, our year of purpose from our mutual friend, fellow author and speaker, Zach Mercurio, who you had known, who had been a speaker at your Purpose, the Purpose Summit in 2019, the very first one, right?
He actually was in 2021. But we had been doing some stuff on LinkedIn and talking to each other and sharing each other's work prior to that. And so you actually beat me to him. He spoke at your Purpose Day before he spoke at the Purpose Summit.
Yeah, our Purpose Day was during our year of purpose in 2019 on the heels of launching our company's organizational purpose in 2018, which was furnishing life's best memories.
That's right.
At a leadership summit, we brought in Inky Johnson and Joey Ryman. We launched our company's organizational purpose. We formed a purpose activation committee. We spent 16 months on the framework of be it, do it, say it. So we wanted to activate it within the organization. Heather Greenwood, who you know, who's been on the podcast, has led that committee, and we met every single week. We studied purpose intently. We read books together. We did book club. We did purpose projects together. We went on a purpose tour together. We went to different purpose conferences. The reason we couldn't go to the Purpose Summit was because we were hosting our own Purpose Summit. We did Purpose 828 on August 28th, 2019, and Zach came in and spoke and did a phenomenal job. So there's a mutual friend, a triangulation of friendships. And then COVID happened, which canceled your second Purpose Summit. But you and I got to be pretty good friends through social media, through phone calls, through just connecting, but didn't meet each other in person until like 3 years later.
Yeah, until the summit in 2022, when you came to the first summit we did at Notre Dame before we repeated it there in 2023. And, you know, it was awesome because I felt like we had known each other forever during those 3 years, even though we hadn't met in person. You had been a guest on my podcast a couple times. And then, of course, wrote about your story and the memory makers in the first book, Finding Purpose at Work. And, man, just it has felt like we've known each other for decades, but it's been 4 long, glorious years. Yeah. And I love what you just said there, because there's a lot of people that talk about purpose, but you took it to the next level. I mean, talk about elevating your purpose. You literally said, we're just not going to talk about this. How many different ways can we apply it? And you just unfolded all of them there. And it's just been awesome to watch you guys take this concept of purpose and live and lead it out in every possible way.
I appreciate you saying that, but you took it you leveled it up, which is why you elevated it when I got to meet you and know you. So that, and I have been on your podcast, and you did feature us in your book, which was amazing. And so glad that you've actually spoken at our United in Purpose series in 2020. Yep. And by the way, when I think I saw you, a picture of you, or maybe I saw you in person, and I said, I thought you were a lot taller. I thought you said, how tall did you think I was? I said, I thought you were like 6'4". And you just had this magnetic stage presence. I thought you were like this like really tall person. And so anyways, I thought that was
big things come in small packages.
That's right.
I'm 5'6.5".
Pack a powerful punch, Davin. So anyways, we got to meet at the University of Notre Dame for the Purpose Summit in 2022, which was an amazing experience. We took 12 memory makers. So anyways, we're going to have a multi-part series here and get to go through several topics. Your first book, your second book, the things that you've come to talk to us about. But before we do that, let's talk about the origin story. So we have to know about Davin Salvagno. So take us back to your Philly roots and your background and your career, and then how you got into this whole Purpose Summit thing, if you will. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and buckle up, folks. This is about to get real with Davin.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. How many hours do we have? I want to make sure I keep your listeners engaged here.
You had a lunch. You had a hard stop.
That's good. All right. So as you mentioned, born and raised in Philly. I'm a Philly guy at heart. Bleed green, big Eagles fan for the Eagles fan. I appreciate that you're wearing green today. That's fantastic.
I knew we were going to talk about your origin story.
I love it. And Flyers fan, all things Philly. So I spent the first 18 years of my life in Philly. I was born and raised into an Italian family. I wanted to be a school teacher. That was a big thing. Teachers had a profound impact on my life. I begrudgingly moved to the state of Michigan my senior year of high school, and I took a bit of a detour personally. I went into a really dark place for about 6 years. That move impacted me greatly, but there was a purpose in it, and I didn't know what it was at the time. But I have to say that because I think when I really look back at what happened there, that's when I really started to focus on, well, what's the purpose in this, right? Because when things don't go the way that we think they should go or want them to go, we always start asking why. We make ourselves the victim, and I didn't learn that until much later in life. I made a lot of mistakes as a result of that move. But I find myself in Michigan, and I've now been there for the last 25 years of my life. And it has never really felt like home, even though I'm blessed with an amazing wife named Amy. We've been married 16 years. We've got two amazing kids, Vera, who's 12, Bennett, who's 9. And they're at home waiting for me. I'm on day 6 of my 8-day trip here in Charlotte. But end up in Michigan and still going to school to become a teacher. And I end up getting a job at Costco wholesale. And while putting myself through college, and I meet Jim Sinegal, the founder and CEO of Costco, and he had a profound impact on my life.
Was he just walking through the store one day?
He was. Okay. And so here's the thing. I didn't know that this was a thing, but I mean, obviously you being in retail, you understand how floor walks and all those different types of things. So, but I didn't know. This was really my first real job. I had summer jobs and different things, but this was my first real job. So I'm at Costco, and Jim, the founder and CEO of Costco, walks into the store, walks right up to me, puts his hand out and says, "Hi, I'm Jim. What's your name?" Now, here's the thing. He was wearing a name badge that said Jim, so he didn't have to say, "Hi, I'm Jim." And I was wearing a name badge that said Davin, so he didn't have to ask me for my name. But he did that intentionally because he wanted to make sure that he established a connection. And I said, "My name's Davin." He said, "Davin, let me ask you a question. Why do you work at Costco? What is it that we're doing well, and what could we be doing better?" And I had been there for less than a year, and he's asking my opinion on what they're doing well. This is before engagement surveys were a thing. He was a walking, talking engagement survey. And so I fell in love with the culture of...
He was a walking, talking engagement survey.
Walking, talking engagement survey.
That's so good.
So good. He was a walking, and I wrote about him in the first book, Finding Purpose at Work, and I think I called him that, a walking, talking engagement survey. But I learned a lot about business from Jim. I ended up growing very quickly at Costco. In fact, ended up not finishing my teaching degree as a teacher because Costco offered me a marketing manager job that paid twice a teacher's salary, and I was 21 years old. So I had to choose teaching degree, be a teacher, or put this on pause and take this job, making double, see where it goes. So I take the job, and as you know, Charlie, I love to talk to people, and I was enamored by Costco. So I became a walking, talking billboard for Costco, and I got to learn a lot about business from Jim, about how to treat people, how to build cultures, how to focus on purpose. And he wasn't talking a lot about purpose, but I look at that now and I can see that that's actually what it was. Mm-hmm. And so I saw a lot of what good looks like at Costco. And then I got recruited to go work at Macy's because I was playing hockey with the vice president of Macy's, and Macy's was growing quickly by acquisition. They were buying up a ton of retailers, and they had a bit of a culture problem because, as you know, when you grow through acquisition, merging cultures is really difficult. Yes. And so we were having a locker room talk one day, and they said, hey, we need you to come bring some of that culture stuff you keep talking about at Costco and sprinkle it over here. So I go over to Macy's. I spend 3 years with them. The bottom falls out in 2008, 2009, 2010. They start closing stores. It's really hard to focus on culture when you are just trying to survive a fallout and you start closing stores. Mm-hmm. And so, that didn't last very long because they were facing that. And I got hit up by a headhunter from CVS pharmacies, and they were also growing quickly by acquisition, but in a thriving industry. They were buying up. There was mass consolidation happening in the healthcare sector. It was really coming down to just being CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid, and then just very, very few independent pharmacies. And they said, hey, we need you to come sprinkle some of that culture stuff over here. And so I went to go work with them and spent 7 years with CVS Health. And I'd gotten to meet the founders of CVS Health, the people who started that company. And I didn't know this, but CVS had stood for Consumer Value Store. When they had their very first store, they wanted to focus on the relationship with the consumer. It wasn't about the products. It wasn't about the profit. It was about the people, both those that came in every day and those that worked there. And I was enamored with this idea of a singular purpose that they had and their focus on people. And so as I spent time at CVS, I found myself talking more and more and more about the founding PurposePoint story of CVS pharmacies. And I found that very few people knew what it was. And so everywhere I went in that organization, I kept on asking, do you remember the PurposePoint story for which CVS started? And that was the first time I ever used the phrase PurposePoint.
You were using it then.
I was using it then, but I didn't, it wasn't a thing. I just used that term to call them back to the beginning of why they started the company.
It's interesting. I'm going to take a quick pause. Yeah. You're on a roll. This is great. So you were at Costco for about 7 years?
7 years, yeah.
From late 90s till...
From 2010 to...
No, go back.
I'm sorry.
Costco. You were not...
Costco was 2001 to 2007.
Okay.
Macy's was...
And you stopped as a marketing manager?
Yes, correct. Okay. Yep.
So you're marketing manager, but you were working on culture there.
Yep.
Okay. Then you go to Macy's for 3 years from 2007 to
2010.
Okay, as a marketing manager?
Nope. So they initially hired me in as an operator, which is wild because I didn't have any operations experience. But what they recognized was I had the experience of walking floors with Jim and understanding all that and all those pieces. So they brought me as an operator. So I ran an area of stores for
in Michigan.
In Michigan for Macy's for a little bit. And then I transitioned into HR. And a big piece of that was I saw a big gap between operators and HR. Okay. And I thought that I could bridge that. So I ended up in kind of this strategic hybrid senior operator HR role. They created it. It was very interesting. And then CVS, same thing. They initially hired me into operations and then eventually were grooming me to be VP of HR for the company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As, for a fortunate company. And then that's kind of where things started to shift a little bit. So before the sunset on CVS, what had happened was I started constantly talking about the founding purpose story of the founders.
And you were at CVS from 2010 till when?
2016.
And that's when you left to start
PurposePoint.
PurposePoint.
That's right.
And I just saw something recently or read something that people didn't know what CVS stood for.
That's right.
It's not customer, it's consumer.
Consumer value stores.
And that's where you came up with PurposePoint. And so you had this nudging to start PurposePoint?
So what had happened was we had our retail leadership conference at CVS Pharmacies, and now CVS Health. And I was having a conversation with a bunch of senior leaders there. And again, no one remembered the story. And what I was really watching happen is that they had a really great mission statement. They had a really great purpose statement. But we were struggling as an organization to live it out. They weren't putting it into action the way that you just described that you do with memory makers at Broad River Retail. And that really frustrated me. And I wanted to see it put into action. Mm-hmm. And I had given this talk. It was really the first keynote that I'd ever done. And it was the first time that I had said this phrase, and I think I've said it 1,000 times since then. But I had challenged them. I was kind of ornery, and I said, listen, how many of you remember the PurposePoint story for which CVS started? Every company starts with a purpose, this thing that they want to do, as Patrick Lencioni says, to improve the quality of human life in some way. and they invite people to be a part of this journey that they're going to go on. And then they start putting processes in place to support the people to achieve the purpose. Then they start measuring performance, and then they start turning a profit. And then every company, as they grow older, larger, and bigger, they start to focus more and more and more on process, performance, and profit. And they forget the founding PurposePoint story and that they invite people to be a part of it. And I was watching that happen.
Yeah.
And so I had a meeting with the president of CVS at that time as they were grooming me for the VP position. And I knew that taking that job as VP of HR at that point in my life, I had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was beginning on a plane on Monday, coming home on Friday. I would have been a 2-day-a-week father and husband, and that was not the life that I was ready for, and I didn't want to sacrifice that time with my family, my purpose as a husband and a father for that role. I'm like, give me about 10 years. I would do that now, but then that was a really challenging
You
time.
would have had to fly to where?
Everywhere, all over the country, because I would have been VP of HR for a Fortune 5 company.
So
I would have been,
and you were director or senior director at the time.
yeah, correct, yeah. So that was not, and I remember standing in Chicago in a hotel room and having the executive vice president call me and say, "You're making a big mistake here. Like we want you to become our chief people officer, and this is the step to become that. And if you don't take it, it ain't gonna happen." And I knew what that meant. I knew what he was saying. And we still have a great relationship today. He's retired. In fact, he lives in Tampa Bay. He was at the Bucks-Eagles game last week, and he was texting me the entire time during the game about how good the Eagles were and how they were getting smacked around a little bit. But great relationship. But, I had a choice to make. And so I was on a plane coming back from my meeting with the president, and I'd read the book Halftime by Bob Buford.
And I want to get into your favorite books, but you've referenced this book, Halftime. We're going to put this in the show notes. This is one that, you thought you were about to go into the second half. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, this book upended my world. It has impacted me more than any other book other than the Bible. I mean, that book changed my life.
Halftime
by
Bob Buford.
By Bob Buford.
Got it.
Yes. And that book he basically lays out in that book that we are conditioned for success. Go to school, get a great education, find a company to work for, spend 30, 40 years life working for them, retire at 62 and a half, get the gold watch, and then start living your life. And, I had bought into that roadmap. But he says, no matter what level of success that you attain in life, in any organization, monetarily or otherwise, you will find that between the ages of 35 and 55, something significant is missing. And what's missing is significance, because while we are conditioned for success, we're created for significance. There is an innate purpose that is within us, that we want to know that our lives matter, that we make a difference, that we have an impact on those around us, that when we're long gone, that the dash on our tombstone means something in between the years that are just represented there. And I have a good friend of mine who's writing a great book on this, and it's going to be called What's Your Plus? And the idea is turning the dash into a plus sign. Like, what did you add to this world?
For someone who wanted to be a school teacher, I feel like I'm in class right now. This is so good.
So good.
We're going to have to go back, hit rewind on this one a few times and listen to what Davin just said a few times. So turning the dash into a plus sign.
Turning the dash into a plus. My friend.
From ages 35 to 55, we're made for significance.
Made for significance. Yeah. That's right. I mean, we're made for significance our entire life, but this is when we really start to realize that. And the dash to plus, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Tom Darrow. That's his book that's going to be coming out shortly, and more information on that when that comes out. But yeah, Bob Buford, and on Halftime, this journey of significance, most people, they look at this time between 35 and 55 and they mislabel it as a midlife crisis, right? That's what we've called it. We label a lot of things, and that's what we call it, as a midlife crisis. And so then what happens is we start searching for the right thing, but in all the wrong places. We start searching for purpose, but we don't know where to look for it. And we start filling these holes in our lives with things that aren't what we were created to do. And so I was enamored with this idea. And so I was all of a sudden caught with this idea of how many people are unfulfilled because they're not living out their purpose. And a big piece of that is we spend most of our lives at work. Most of our waking hours we spend at work. So if we could figure out what our purpose is at work, and we can step into that every single day, well, then we can go home and be more fulfilled. We can go home and give the best to our families instead of giving them our leftovers. We can go home and fulfill our purpose as a parent or as a spouse. And 85% of the world, according to Gallup, is disengaged at work, which means when they go home, they're disengaged at home, right? So we have a massive opportunity in the workplace to transform who people are, how they show up every day at work and at home. And I was just enamored with this thought. And so I'm on this plane, I'm reading this book, And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I had a conversation with God on the plane. And I said, I've spent the last 20 years of my life in marketing, operations, human resources. I have a passion for people and purpose, and particularly the founding purpose point stories for why companies start and helping them remember that. What am I supposed to do with all of this? And almost as clear as day, it was start a consulting company, call it Purpose Point. Go help companies remember their founding purpose, help inspire their people to be a part of it again, but then inspire those companies to help their people find and fulfill their purpose at work every day so that they can make a greater impact when they go home. Wow. And that's what led to the book, Finding Purpose at Work.
And so you're how old at the time you're reading this book?
Oh, gosh. This was 2016, so I would have been 36.
Okay. And what led you to just pick up this book?
So I didn't pick it up. So my financial advisor, and who's also a good friend of mine, and actually if you read Finding Purpose at Work, the very first chapter where I'm talking about, so I sat down with my friend and we had breakfast and we were having this conversation. His name's Dave Smith, and we've known each other for 15 years. He's a dear friend. He had given me this book a year prior. And it, like many books, sat on my desk because I have a stack. I mean, it's so funny because I hated to read when I was in school. I couldn't stand it, and now I've become like a book fanatic, and I've got like stacks of books that, Chester Elton calls it top of the stack. What's your next book? So this had kind of been top of the stack for a long time, but he warned me. He said, if you read this book, it might change your life. And those like words kind of haunted me, and so I kind of kept on putting it off the top of the stack. And I've, after this plane ride, during this plane ride, I just brought it with me, and I felt that was the time to open it, and I'm glad I did when I did. So he had given me the book.
So you've got this path to being VP of HR of a Fortune
5 company. Then it was Fortune 8.
Yeah,
now it's Fortune 5. Yeah.
And potentially on the track to be a chief people officer.
Yeah.
Which meant many nights away, traveling on the plane, all over the country, but a great career path versus let me go hang out my shingle
That's right.
and start up a consultancy called PurposePoint.
That's right.
And so after you read the book and had this epiphany, how long afterwards did you go create PurposePoint?
6 months.
6 months.
So I wrestled with this for a while, and I sought the advice of a lot of people, right? There's wisdom in a lot of counselors. And so I had met with many people, different friends, elders, people I respected, different advisors that I had. And one of them was the managing partner for Northwestern Mutual, dear friend of mine. His name's Brad Seitsinger. I actually contributed a whole chapter into the Standout series about his impact on my life. And he's also in this book, Finding Purpose at Work. But we sat down and I said, Brad, I think I want to quit my job, live off stock options for a couple of years and start this consulting company. And he listened. He's a really good listener. We're sitting at this restaurant called Cruz Amir in Michigan. They've got paper tabletops and crayons. I don't know why the crayons are there other than for the waiter to write their name. But I'm talking to him, and he's taking the crayons, and he's writing feverish notes all over this paper tablecloth. And listening the whole time, just saying, And then I get done talking, and he looks up and he says, Davin, I think we need you here at Northwestern Mutual. And I said, Brad, I don't want to sell insurance. I don't want to manage money. Like that's not my thing. He goes, no, I don't think you understand. He says, we have an amazing founding purpose point story here at the company. I don't think anybody knows what it is because people get into this deal to help people and then so quickly it becomes transactional. And I think you can help us turn our office around. I think you can help us turn the company around. And so the reason I'm telling you this story is because he offered me an exclusive deal from 2016 to 2018 that if I left CVS and I just served his office, he would make me whole from my contract and and serve them exclusively for 2 years. So I got to pilot PurposePoint for 2 years within Northwestern Mutual. And I had traveled back and forth to Milwaukee, their headquarters. I'd met with John Schlifsky, their CEO, and we had spent some time together. And every year Northwestern Mutual has this annual meeting where they bring all of their entire team from across the country for 3 days at the Fiserv Forum, 10,000 people in a basketball arena where the Bucks play. And, I was talking with John in Milwaukee before that, and we were talking about the founding purpose story of Northwestern Mutual. We were talking about the power of purpose, which is this talk that I love to give. And he said, I think I'm going to use that at the annual meeting. And so, he comes out and opens up the annual meeting, and there on the Megatron in Fiserv Forum in blue, it says the power of purpose. And he comes out and basically gives my keynote talk. And I look at Brad and I said, I think my job here is done. And I think it's time for other companies to hear this message. And then that's when PurposePoint officially began in 2018.
Wow. So that's how PurposePoint started. You had a 2-year runway from
right.
Northwestern.
That's right.
Northwestern Mutual.
That's right.
And you were flying to Milwaukee.
Yep.
And you were with their C-suite executive team
Yep.
to help them unpack and uncover their own purpose point.
That's right.
Which led to that being featured as their keynote for their 2018
annual meeting.
At the Milwaukee Bucks Arena.
That's correct.
You were there.
Yep.
The CEO gave your talk, I guess, as his keynote.
That's right.
And what did it say across
the power of purpose?
The power of purpose in 2018 for Northwestern Mutual. And I think that probably dovetailed into like everything they were doing, because I remember some of their like commercials even talking about that. And then you said, I think my work here is done.
That's right.
It's time for me to take PurposePoint to share with other companies.
That's right.
And so you would really uncover, and they gave you this 2-year runway to like make you good on your income as their sole client. And so you're like part of their team for 2 years.
That's right.
So really you work for 4 companies, Costco, Macy's, CVS, Northwestern Mutual. You're making all these great contacts along the way. You're reading these great books like Halftime. You're discovering your purpose. You take this leap of faith to go off on your own, but you don't do it unhinged. You do it with a 2-year runway to really crystallize your message, make sure it works in the marketplace. There's some good wisdom in that because you got the wisdom of counselors before you stepped out. Then you felt really good about hanging out your shingle, and you didn't like hang it out like unhinged. You were tethered to a great company that then gave you this runway. You developed it, and now you're really ready. So I guess over those 2 years, you really started to read a whole lot more about organizational purpose, individual purpose. Is that when, like, and then when did the vision take us from there? Like when you stepped away from Northwestern Mutual to then that morphed into the vision for the Purpose Summit. Like what transpired from when you left them and whenever that was in 2018 to when you started the Purpose Summit in 2019 and who you began working with?
Yeah. So that 2 years at NM, which was really, I give all the credit to that to Brad Seitzinger. I mean, he really created that entire opportunity and made those introductions. I mean, I'm not having a conversation with John Slifty, the CEO, if he's not believing in me and sending me to Milwaukee. And so that was a 2-year incubation period. And I was digesting, I had digested books on leadership. I had studied everyone from Blanchard to Lencioni to Covey to Buckingham. I mean, you name someone on leadership, organizational development, culture, purpose. I was inhaling content. And, as I started to really pull that together, I took pieces of that and I put it in this Power of Purpose talk. And I started speaking to some other organizations, people who had been asking me, hey, can you come speak here? Can you come speak here? I wasn't necessarily doing it professionally at that point in time. I was really just doing it because I believed in the message. Mm-hmm. And so I started to take this message to different places. And then the next thing I know, it became, hey, can you come speak at our conference? Can you come speak at our conference? And so I started traveling and speaking on this one keynote I had, The Power of Purpose. I started writing about it and then started interviewing different people about it. And actually, one of my favorite authors on the topic, Nick Craig, he spoke at the last 3 Purpose Summits. He wrote the book Leading from Purpose, fantastic book. We had met through LinkedIn. And I don't know if you've seen In Search of Italy, Charlie, but it is a great show. I'm a big Stanley Tucci fan. And for those of you who are listening to this, if you don't know who Stanley Tucci is or In Search of Italy, he goes to Italy and he finds the founding source of like all of these amazing things that we take for granted and enjoy today. Like here's where prosciutto was born in Parma and the original people that created it. And here's where mozzarella was first made and limoncello and all these different things. And it's so good to watch. Don't watch it hungry. But he said, you know who you are? You're the Stanley Tucci of purpose. You go to all of these places, all these companies, and you find these founding purpose stories, and you share them with the world. And I realized that that's what I was doing, and I fell in love with that. And that's really what actually ultimately led to the book, Finding Purpose at Work. And so I told some of the stories, including yours in Broad River Retails in the balcony people section of Finding Purpose at Work. And then in 2019, I said, we need to have an event to really bring all these people together. Right? All these speakers that I know talk about purpose the way that I believe in it, all these companies who are living it out. And we need to show the world that this isn't fluff, that this is foundational, that this can have a profound impact on the lives of the people that you're stewarding and leading in on your company and actually turn into some really great healthy results for your organization as a byproduct. And so we had this vision and said, why don't we bring everyone together And so in 2019, we didn't really have any money for this. We didn't have any marketing for this. We didn't have any runway for the Purpose Summit. And so I had a friend who you recently met, Chris Lambert in Detroit, who was doing some amazing purpose-driven work with an organization called Life Remodeled that he had founded.
Life Remodeled.
Life Remodeled, phenomenal organization. To this date, over the last 12 years, they've repurposed and beautified over 2,000 city blocks in Detroit, raised $42 million. They've refinished 5 different high schools in the area, and in the neighborhoods they've served, human trafficking and homicides have gone down almost 50% in just that time frame. I mean, phenomenal work. And this one building they had, beautiful building, 157,000 square foot school building, 100 years old, marble walls, cherry wood ceilings, gorgeous building. And Detroit Public Schools had just closed it. And it was just going to sit and rot in this, neighborhood that was surrounded in blight. And this was one of the neighborhoods they had adopted. And, we had thought different places to do the summit. We had looked at doing it at the Fisher Theater in Detroit, which is a really nice theater where they do musicals and different things. But we just didn't have the capital, the runway, or the marketing to do it. And so actually it was, my colleague at the time, Kurt David, who is a co-founder in the Purpose Summit, and he said, why don't we do it at your friend Chris Lambert's place? And I said, that's a really great idea. We can shine the spotlight on what Chris is doing by doing the summit there. And maybe that'll help, grow what his work. So we pull together these resources. We got 4 months of runway, and we bring together these speakers. It was going to be a 2-day event. Day 1 focused on individual purpose. Doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company or a frontline employee who just started that day. We really want you to tap in. What is your purpose? What are your gifts, talents, abilities, skill sets? How are you using them every day? And day 2, organizational purpose. What is the founding purpose of your company beyond just making a profit? And how are you leading with that in the front rather than in the rearview mirror? And how do we connect these two worlds? So we put this thing on, and over 300 people and companies from across the country come to Detroit for this conversation.
This was in Mount Clemens?
No, this was in Detroit, in a blighted neighborhood in 2019 in inner city Detroit. Actually, it was in one of the highest crime zip codes in the city of Detroit.
Okay. Press pause for a second.
Yeah.
You left the Northwestern Mutual event was when in 2018?
July
of 2018.
Yep.
The first Purpose Summit was in August of 2019?
May of 2019.
May of 2019.
That's right.
So
9 months.
Okay, 9 months. But you said you had a 4-month runway. So was it by January you decided of 2019?
It was November. We were sitting around a table.
Of 2018.
Of 2018. We were sitting around a table having this whole conversation.
Okay.
And then in December is when I kind of had the idea and said, what if we did our own event?
Okay.
And then so we started planning it, and then in January we announced it, January of 2019.
Okay.
And then we had a 4-month runway to get it going because we scheduled it for April 29th, which ironically, the same exact dates of the first Purpose Summit, April 29th through May 1st, are the same exact dates of the 5th Purpose Summit happening here in Charlotte.
Wow. Okay. Now, I love this whole concept of an incubation period.
Yeah.
So much good can come from an incubation period, right? It's like the story of the bamboo, right?
That's right.
It's not.
That's right.
It's all growing underground.
That's right.
And
You don't see it.
Everyone thinks it's growing like a foot a year, but they didn't see the 20 years of toil where all the roots were building and all the knowledge was being gained. So you're immersing yourself in this incubation period and the study of purpose to become the Stanley Tucci of purpose, as Nick Craig would call you. And then you had these co-founders. You had Kurt David.
Yep.
Who's around this table in November of 2018 with you? How did all this? Kurt was a co-founder of PurposePoint with you?
Yeah. So what had happened is obviously PurposePoint, I had initially started as a consulting company for myself, but I said, well, what if PurposePoint isn't my thing? What if it's our thing? What if PurposePoint is more just this conceptual? It doesn't need to be a company. It can just almost kind of be this flag that different speakers and consultants and authors under Purpose kind of fly under, and we can collaborate together, make a greater impact together. My vision was never to build a company. It was really to lead a movement, is what it was, and to bring like-minded people, speakers together under this. And Kurt was the first person who saw that vision, and he said, "Yeah, I'm in." And so Kurt and I have emceed every Purpose Summit since the first one. But the very first one was really him and I coming together and saying, this is what this should look like. And we alternated. I think I gave the opening keynote on the first day, and he emceed the whole first day. And then he gave the talk the second day, and I emceed the whole second day. But he was on that. Also around that table was Joe Shakatano, really dear friend of mine. He was one of the first people that I shared this idea with when I had the counselors and ideas with, and he helped us develop the very first PurposePoint website. And to this day, he's served in many roles. He's served on our board. He's done lots of things. Steve Pecor was one of the founding people there. He, for a period of time, was a partner and COO in our organization. We've recently restructured PurposePoint to go back to what it originally was. We had built this. We grew too fast. There's a lesson in this for those of you who are listening. Kurt kept on reminding me, two dangers of building a business are growing too slow and growing too fast. We grew way too fast. We got a little big for our bridges, as they say down south that I'm learning. And so we've recently even had a meeting with our team, and we've restructured to go back to the original model. And so, now there aren't any partners or C-suite people or all of that. We just have our founding group that want to lead a movement together. And so it's cool. We've had a lot of people come into this. Some go, some come. But we meet new people every day that raise their hand, that see the vision of, wow, if we can get organizations to focus on purpose, not use purpose for profit, but use purpose as a means to help their people be better at work every day, so that they're better at work and then better at home, that will create incredible cultures, make a greater difference in the world, and profit will be the result of that.
You could use, don't get too big for your britches. I like to say, don't get out over your skis.
That's good too. That's good too.
I'm not a skier.
That's right.
So I want to bring you, we got a lot more we got to talk about. I want to bring you back next week and tell more of the story and more chapters in this series, I guess you could say. But just to close out this one, during your incubation period, or even when you were kind of formulating some of your ideas that went into your first book, what are some of the books beside, you started rattling off a lot of the leaders, Lynn Choney and Nick Craig and Ken Blanchard, and maybe we can get into those next week, but who were some of the leader books that, give me your top 5 purpose-related books, or what'd you read during that time that really resonated and sticks with you today?
Yeah, so right off the top, everything Blanchard and Lencioni. I mean, Ken's written 62 books. He's become a mentor and friend of mine. He wrote the foreword to Finding Purpose at Work. But I mean, his books are transformative. There's 62 of them. It's hard to recommend one over the other. Everyone knows the 1 Minute Manager, and they think that that's the only one, but there's 61 other books. Patrick Lencioni, all of his books are great. Most of them are written like fables, but the one that sticks out to me the most is The Advantage. I feel like he took all of the lessons from the 5 dysfunctions and death by meeting and the ideal team player and all these different pieces, and he created The Advantage as a blueprint for companies that really want to focus on purpose as the foundation of their organizational health model. That work is fantastic. One of my favorite works probably on purpose is Leading with Purpose from Nick Craig. That book is transformative, both personally for yourself and as a leadership book. Absolutely tremendous. Another great book is To Be Honest by my friend Ron Carucci. He spoke at the Purpose Summit last year. He's coming back and speaking this year. That's a transformative book that talks about being honest with yourself and others, and it will challenge you. I mean, it's one of those books that you'll want to throw out of your car window a few times because it'll rub you, but in a good way. I am so glad that he wrote that book, because it's challenged me to be even better, even as a subject matter expert on this. And then, finally, I would say Gary Ridge, Helping People Win at Work. That's a very easy read. And, he is so focused on purpose, people, culture, values. It's a short, easy read book, but it really is a blueprint. If you want to lead people well and you want to see what good looks like, Helping People Win at Work is a gem.
That's great. A few others that I would add to the list. We talked about Zach Mercurio.
Oh, yeah.
The Invisible Leader.
Ooh, so good. So good.
We went through that as a pack. And then he actually called in during our book club review and went through it. That was a cool call we had with him when we were going through one of the chapters. Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman is a great one. I even like The Power of Moments by the Heath brothers.
Yep.
And you could call those moments of impact, or those flagship moments, as purpose moments, if you will. We even kind of came up with purpose bombs from that, like purpose surprises, if you will. And Dr. Nicholas Pierce, The Purpose Path.
Purpose Path, yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, Davin, we're out of time for this episode. Thank you I hope will you come back again and let's tell more of the story. All right. Hey guys, that's it from this part of the Davin Salvagno Elevate Your Purpose series. Hey, since we're in the business of furnishing life's best memories, Go make today. Go have one of your life's best memories today. Thanks for joining us. Come back next week. We'll tell more of Davin's story. Thanks, Davin.
So good.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.